Hey everyone, this is Dr. Julie Dameron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
For more information on the Voice of San Joaquin, go to tvosj.org.
The Voice of San Joaquin and the Voice of Stockton presents Behind the Art Scene with your host, Joy Neas.
Hi everybody, glad to be back on air. This is show 51, and today I have the pleasure to present Angelique Grijalva and Jason Fisher, and they've had a really interesting background in the arts. And Angelique, why don't you tell us how you got started?
In the arts?
Yes.
Actually, my journey with the arts kind of started way back as a child. You know, my grandparents worked at Cal Cedar, and they'd bring home these blocks of wood, and Grandma would ask me, you know, do you see anything? And I'd be like, yeah. So they gave me watercolor paints, and it all kind of just started from there. And I just, anything I could draw on, and, you know, Grandpa's T-shirts and Grandma's towels. So they started giving me projects to do. Uh-huh. And then later on got into, I actually had private art classes with Mrs. Betts from Commodore Skill School. I had private art classes with her. Meanwhile, I also played violin. I also did ballet as a child. And then in theater in high school. After that, went to college, did predominantly performing arts. And so I was a theater dance major for quite a while.
So that was at Delta College?
Yeah, San Joaquin Delta College. And we're the second generation acting training program. So with the training program, not only were you doing the acting, they encouraged the dance. You had to work in the scene shop. So I learned how to do large scale paintings. And I liked painting anyways. So being able to do the scrims and the backdrops and the perspective, you know, from that would really help me out.
So how large would you say the largest piece you've ever done?
The largest piece I've ever done is a 20-foot koi for Delta Fusion a few years back. It was one of the backdrops for one of the stories. It was that year that we had 3 stories, and that koi was for the Maxine Hong story. Uh-huh. That's the largest piece.
And Jason, how did you guys get together?
Well, actually, we started off at Delta. I was doing theater at Stockton Civic and through high school and so forth, beforehand. And we actually met at Delta College, took a few classes together, and then I believe it was the second or third year, that the actor training program first came into its pilot stage, and we were among the probably about 8 or 9 students who actually participated in that program for the first time.
So what year would that have been?
That would have been 93 and 94,
so
I believe.
Is that program still going on? Or?
From what I understand, it still is. It's a different incarnation from what we had been used to. I mean,
back then we had Harvey Jordan taking the lead. And we had Jeff Wentworth and John White, and then we had Barbara Crocker, Larry Dominguez in Costume Shop, and the one in the scene shop. I forget. I remember Miss Kirby.
Charlie Kirby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
JD.
JD.
There we go.
Yeah, and we ran the whole gamut of theater aspects and disciplines. So there was the acting aspect, various different styles of that, but also in the technical realm is where we had to design a set for a show, had to design and make a costume piece, which I think it did rather poorly. But it was a whole immersion into theater. There's I believe there was even some aspects of the business that we had learned, and just basically everything that you'd want to know as an actor or as a technician.
Yeah.
So that it was a very well-rounded curriculum.
It was very immersive. You know, if you weren't in a show, you were working on a show, whether it was like costuming or makeup or the scene shop or backstage.
So, because I know that you've done a lot with paper mache. Is that where you learned how to do that?
Actually,
or?
I remember doing some in high school for theater. And then I had picked up the bigger stuff when I was working with Delta Fusion. I learned their style of making paper mache with the cornstarch, the newspaper, and the bags. And that just was just amazing because you could, like, after using that, you could, like, make furniture. That stuff is just dries so solid. So I was able to make the Day of the Dead dancers. In fact, they're going to get a facelift this year. It's been a few years. They get new costumes too, and the Delta Fusion ones, they were just so huge. But I remember I was at the Mexican Heritage Center working on the float for Cinco de Mayo. It was a Loteria theme, so I was doing the mermaid to go on top of the van.
Right.
And someone walked by and they go, "Do you know Delta Fusion?" I'm like, "No." They go, "You need to."
I think that was me.
Yeah, it wasn't you.
That was me.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah, I remember that. It was just like, you need to look up Delta Fusion.
Yes.
And I'm like, really? Yeah, and I was with them for 6 years.
And you ended up being one of the performers.
Yeah.
What was that character?
I was Delta Fusion. I played the little Delta Fusion, the mama. And she didn't speak. I wore a mask and I danced around a lot. But I was involved in all the scenes. She was kind of like a physical narrator.
Yeah, I love that character. And I think that's what they put on all the publicity, all the shirts and all the different programs and everything.
And then, like, during the year we would go out and do little, like, at Earth Day, little synopsis here and there. We'd show up at different things, different events in costume and promote Delta Fusion.
So I heard, are they going to continue that at all? Have you heard anything about it? Or?
I have not heard anything at this time.
Oh.
One would hope.
Yeah, I need to investigate that, but I thought they were going to do it in some incarnation, a new version.
It might evolve.
So,
you know, I had heard, it was 2016. 2017.
2017.
Yeah, it was the last one.
And then they said they were going to skip a year, but obviously it didn't happen this time. So,
and there was
it seems to be pretty much up in the air.
There was a lot of talk of a lot of different aspects.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I'm really very dismayed about what's happening at the University of the Pacific.
That's a huge part of it too, not having access to that studio theater. I mean, because it was a month-long program, and then we had the rehearsal rooms on the side, and then we had the grass on the outside to practice with the puppets and their scene shop, their costume shop. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no place around besides Delta College that would have that type space.
So we really need more places for the arts, as I keep saying. One fond memory, but it's just a memory. Can you talk about your time at Pollardville?
Oh, Pollardville, yeah. That was something me and Jason did. he happened to mention, he goes, we were talking about historical reenactments, I think, in class, and he was just like, well, I just happened to go out to Pollardville. I'm like, what? Are you serious? So we did historical reenactments out in Pollardville. We'd rob the train, walk around in costume all day, and I'd have my lace gloves, my parasol, my bustle costumes, and we did Jamestown, Sonora.
Mm-hmm.
I had my own little black powder pistol.
Yeah, I had a group for about 4 years with an old classmate of mine called the Delta Regulators. And we did shows up in Sonora and Jamestown. We did a stint in Roaring Camp for a bit. But our main area was basically Pollardville. And we would do weekend shows there.
Festivals.
And festivals. They had 1800s America, Living History at one point. There was the Gunfighters Rendezvous that are up in the foothills. And we did that for about, I had the group for about 4 years. And Angelique came in probably about a year into it, year and a half. And we had a great time. It was nice getting immersed into all the costumes and the the characters we would play. A lot of times I played a town drunk.
So what year was that?
This would have been 91 to about 95.
Yeah. And we were a comedy group, too, so it was pretty funny. Just, I'd like chase around with a gun and stuff.
Yeah, we wrote a lot of our own material, but we also helped with actual historical reenactments, like the gunfight at the OK Corral or the Northfield, Minnesota raid, among others, with other groups in the area.
So how did you put your costumes together? Was that through the thrift store?
That was the thrift store. Yeah, just, being familiar with the era. So you go to the store and get like 2 or 3 dresses, cut them up, put them together, find something you can use for petticoats or crinolines, and go to hobby stores if they didn't have ribbons and lace, and keep an eye out for gloves. And this is like all before Amazon. Wow. So, a lot of times we'd have to just get, because I had a costuming background, get those, the strips that had the eyelets in it already, and put those down the back of the dresses. So you have like corset stays, and then layer them.
What's a crinoline? Yeah,
Crinoline's like a type of petticoat.
Okay.
It's a little longer and a little thicker.
Okay.
So like a petticoat would come up a little higher, like a more 50s era, and crinoline would actually hit the ground, like more Victorian.
Yeah. And with the guys, we got away with
everything.
Blue jeans, standard 501 jeans.
Yeah.
If we had a shirt, on like this one, we'd simply like cut the collar off. If we couldn't find a collarless shirt, we would simply cut the collar off. And with the guys, it was we could get away with a lot.
Sure.
But we tried to get other things like lapelled vests or other more authentic looking garments and so forth. But sometimes we had to improvise a little bit, and being a comic troupe that we were able to get away with a little more than the true reenactors, because they were all decked out in the full wool garb and the mule ear boots and everything. And we had a little more latitude.
Yeah, I remember I had one time.
We were younger at the time. We were only teenagers and
20s.
Early 20s doing this stuff, and the others were like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and so forth. So they had a lot more time and money invested in these things.
Sure,
and we were really doing it on a budget because we just wanted to have fun. And it worked out pretty well.
Can you recommend for someone who wants to get started in something like that, which thrift store? Or?
I like the Hope Chest on Pacific Avenue. That's my favorite. And, it seems like every time I have an idea for something, I kind of have, a thought of what I want, and then I go in there and I find the materials and I just go from there. So yeah, they it's like 95% of the time I find exactly what I need there. So they're really good.
And you did something interesting just recently, the Green Fashion Show. You made 4.
I had 4 entries.
And one of them won the Best in Show.
Yeah, my Khaleesi dress. It was made entirely of drapes, and I had pinned it and folded it over. In watching the show, I noticed how the lines fell and where the slits were, and so I got a dress form and kind of pinned it together. And every hour of pinning would be like 10 minutes of sewing. It was crazy. And then I put vintage jewelry on the back to hold the bracelet. Iron bracelet to hold it down, and then I had these large like lightning bolts. I don't even know where I got it. It was one of my thrift store goodies, but I had a whole baggie of them, and so I put them down the dress to form a dragon. I drew it out in chalk, and then I used acrylics with the textile medium and painted the dragon in. Oh. And it was supposed to be a baby dragon. It was supposed to be the dress was called Khaleesi, Mother of Dragons. Mm-hmm. So it was supposed to be the baby dragon just born. And so the burgundy, it was sheer and then solid, and everything was sprayed with a little bit of black spray paint. And I used a frame of just like a picture frame. Mm-hmm. And it had like curly cues on it, like a cameo. And so I would put that against there and then spray over it. So it had like little wispy looks of smoke all over it. Because that's how the baby dragons were born, were in the fire.
So with the brooches, did they have pins on them?
They were pins, and then I glued them on too.
Glued them.
Because I was afraid that they might come apart. And there really wasn't enough backing on them to actually sew it down completely. Right. And so I had it on the mannequin, and I hot glued it down on the lock and then on the edges so it would lay a little flatter. And then I would painted right over it, and then I scratched some of the paint off so it gives like a bit of a scaly look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so inventive. And you made some kind of a headpiece?
That was actually an old necklace.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just an old necklace I had.
So it kind of like came over the face?
Mm-hmm. To kind of give that old world look, like kind of like Roman era, Byzantine. Because as Game of Thrones, they kind of play off the old styles.
And you've made your headpiece that you're wearing.
Yeah, I have the little fascinator and then a flower to hold it back. And then I think I got this at a garden show. Mm-hmm. And then it had to match my dress. So my butterfly dress.
A butterfly dress.
Yeah, butterfly in my hat.
So you're all about the fashion.
Oh, yeah, details.
You guys had a great time at Earth Day with the new steampunk junk parade. Mm-hmm. So we got to make that bigger and better every year. Get more participants.
I really like how they went from STEM to STEAM and incorporating the arts,
right?
Because the arts can play a bigger part in Earth Day. I mean, not only as far as people go recycling and everything, but imagine if people would use those things and make art from it, right? Like I did with my dresses. You can pad the dresses, you can line a dress with plastics, you can gather them together, make rosettes, and then cover panels and a whole dress with it. There's a lot of options. So if everybody would just recycle, use those things to make artsy dresses, artsy costumes, even your paintings, make it mixed media, imagine how much more would be out of the landfills. How much more would be incorporated in giving it repurposing. Mm-hmm. I like repurposing a lot.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about some of the things your future in art. You're working with children in homeschooling.
Yeah, right now I'm just tutoring some homeschooled children. We did watercolor pencils, watercolor paints, and acrylics, and we made backgrounds. So the next step is to pick the subject matter and do a collaborative composition, a composed piece. Mm-hmm. So the youngest ones are actually twins. They're 4 years old, but it's really cute. They know the difference between acrylics and watercolors. They like acrylics better. And they have ideas, and so we draw it out in chalk, and then we paint. I do big details. I do little details. But we have to sit down and do that again to finish off all the pieces.
And you said you maybe getting a job with Timo?
Well, I'm hoping. There's a position open for a teacher's assistant, so I'm gonna try for that.
That would be wonderful. That's over at Edison High.
I haven't done still life in a while. They do the class is Elements of Art. They do it's more the grid, perspective, portrait. Mm-hmm. value, the color wheel. It's everything I had a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know how to incorporate that into art, but just to break it down again, I was like, I had to buy a book. I had to buy a book, and I've been studying on it. And I got a good gist of it, but yeah, I need to study more on it. Hopefully I'll get a chance to do that.
And I know they
make some samples for the interview. I'm taking the dress in. The Khaleesi, yeah. She's coming with me.
They're doing a lot with murals. Would you be working with that?
Yeah, that's actually how I met Tiamo, was the Miracle Mile muralist, the 3M Co.
Right.
I went to one of their meetings, and they were talking about the need for more volunteers and more. And I was just like, I paint.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully I get more involved with them. And I believe they're going to start. There's a fundraiser coming up May 23rd. It's going to be at Werlo's from 5 to 9. 20% of the proceeds ordered, the food ordered, will be going to 3MCO. And as for, supplies and such. And then the actual painting, I believe, starts in July, August. I have to read my notes again. But, and then the perspective, everything to be done there and then brought over and finished.
So they're planning another mural.
Yes.
Right next to the original one that they did, or
I forgot the street. I think it's the next block over.
Oh, so
I forget.
It's not going to be on Adams.
I don't remember.
Okay, we need.
I'm sorry.
We need to check that. Check that.
I'm like,
all right.
But yeah, I'm real excited. It's like for me, I had stepped away from the arts for a while, and I had worked with the Mexican Heritage Center. I did my own Day of the Dead program with grants from the Stockton Arts Commission for 2013, 2014. And then I moved away to Sacramento to go pursue culinary school. So I was at Le Cordon Bleu. I did their 20-month Associates of Arts program because even though I'd been in college, I just never got everything finished for an associate. So I was like, you know what, I need to do this. So I finished the associates, and then
so we went to your graduation.
Yeah,
we saw you graduate.
I know you liked that pop-up dinner we did too.
Oh yeah,
that was great.
That was fun. We gotta I gotta do. It was a Mexican Italian fusion. I forget the name of it, but I gotta incorporate a lot of my grandma's mole into the foods, and like people were like, "Wow, what is this?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's my grandma's." Wow. So I got to incorporate that, and then I put nopales, cactus, into like everything. I put it in the salsa, I put it in the tacos, I put it in the flank steak rillette. So that was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed school. I really liked being able to be creative in another aspect. To me, it was like making edible art.
Yeah.
If the school had not closed down, I actually would have done a patisserie baking program, but unfortunately it did.
And then you went over to Disney World?
Yes, right before graduation, the last class was actually externship, and so Disney came to school and interviewed, and I was one of the lucky ones that got accepted for an externship. So I went out to Florida, Orlando, to do Walt Disney World out there. And I liked it, so I kept reapplying for the externship, and so I wound up coming in July. I left in July. I left in July, and I came back next May. So I worked at the yacht club. I was doing. It was a character breakfast with Minnie. And then the second one was Epcot Food and Wine Festival. And the third one was Magic Kingdom, the Plaza. And then the fourth one was the Ohana at the Polynesian Hotel, which I think pretty much turned out to be my favorite, was the Ohana.
And then when you came back, you've been...
I worked in the industry. I did give it another couple years. Unfortunately, I find being 5'0" is really not a good size to work as a line chef. The industry is really made for people 5'6" on up. The length of the ovens, the length of the flat, just everything is so long. I had a hard time reaching my pans on the back of the stove. I had a hard time with the deep fryers. I had a hard time. Everything was so big. And then they don't have step ladders,
sure.
In the kitchens. They don't. They like, go get that 50-pound box of rice off that top shelf over there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So it would take me like 5-7 minutes, whereas like someone else would just like, where is she? Go find her.
Living with a cook, my husband Frank, I can relate. It's a very hard life.
It is
in cooking, and you don't. Not a lot of holidays. You got to work. You got to make everybody else's holidays. So.
Yeah. I would like to do it in a smaller. I don't want to go back to restaurants. The restaurant industry. I'm way too short. I got burned up on my arms pretty bad quite a few times. Luckily, it was not any worse than what it was. It was a great experience. I accepted the challenge. I felt as an artist, I've grown a lot from that experience, even though it wasn't truly, art. I was still creating. I was still making things, but the venue is way too rough for someone of my stature.
I consider everything art, and I just love your quiches.
The cupcake quiche.
Those are to die for.
I'm a little partial to the pork belly tacos.
Yeah, those are good too.
Excuse me, because those were amazing, and even
I use grandma's mole on the taco, the tortillas, and I deep fried them.
Yeah.
So you'll never find that anywhere.
Excellent.
So you want to maybe do some private events?
Exactly.
Or?
I would like to do like catering assistant. Maybe not the lead. Sure. But an assistant of receptions and stuff. Something a little smaller. Not. I shouldn't say slower, but you don't have to have the full dinner plate done in like 6 minutes flat. Sure. So yeah, but I learned a lot. As with, everything, you just you go through life picking up this, that, and the other, and you just learn from it. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. This is a little bit of a health risk for me. So I'm going to do something else. So actually that prompted me to get back into the arts. And I mean, like I said, I'm tutoring right now. I really hope to get a TA position. That would be great. And then maybe go work with some other places, after school programs, but I also do like private tutoring as well. And I want to get back into doing commission pieces, and also the textiles. That's something I really want to do more of too. Like remember I was painting my Day of the Dead t-shirts and purses. I think I wanted to go more into dresses, more costumes.
That'd be great. Have you gone to Shades of Color?
No. Where's this at?
Oh, goodness. All right, come on now. You have to go up to Stone Creek Village, and they have a paint studio.
Really?
And they might need some instructors. So,
awesome, I will look it up.
That's a place for you.
Yeah.
So they do all kind of painting on canvas, but they also, like I painted my jeans, and they have ceramics to paint. So they just, they're really open to other art forms, and I think you'd be great there. So.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know how to work with different mediums.
So, Jason, what are you doing? Any projects you have coming up? Or?
I would love to get some projects going. Excuse me. I work for a boat insurance company, so it's so the summers are kind of difficult. But a couple of years back, I did do a show with Linden, the theater group of Linden, and did Footloose. That was a lot of fun. Prior to that, it had been like 23 years since I'd done some kind of a production or a show. Was, getting into the private sector and a career and stuff like that kind of took over at that point. But with Angelique getting back into the art scene and
kind of dragging him along.
Kind of dragging him.
Yeah. There we go.
It's like, we're going to say, hey, there's a reception. We're going.
Kind of dragging me. Yeah, and I've started kind of, getting a little more interested. That bug is starting to kind of manifest itself again. Whether it be going back to SET or some of the other theater groups that are in the area, or staying behind the scenes, or just volunteering in some respect or another. I'm excited about getting into that. I mean, when it was mentioned that the Earth Day celebration was going to be a steampunk-esque themed event, yeah, naturally I jumped on it. I've been doing steampunk for maybe about 4 or 5 years, and just slowly but surely doing it, and just kind of getting into it. Prior to that was Renaissance fairs, and then of course the gunfighter groups and things like that, and the reenactments. So I always liked getting into those characters and playing some bit of a part in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, so getting back into it's going to be. I'm excited about it because it's given me a new avenue to take.
I loved your outfit. Could you describe it to us?
Okay, well, basically, steampunk is kind of an amalgam of Elizabethan 19th century fashion and technology, and the technology being steam, gears, cogs, those types of engines, and so you got
the very first engines.
Yeah, going all over the place. So it's a kind of a combination between those two. So you see, it can be something as simple as gears on a lapel, or it could be something more elaborate, with the goggles, or even I've seen articulated arms, almost like pieces of armor that were modified to look like an actuated, almost robotic, steam-driven arm. Nice thing, the fun thing about these types of things, for me at any rate, is you could be as simple or you can be as elaborate as you want to be, as long as you're having fun with it.
In the spirit of it.
In the spirit of it. And there's offshoots to steampunk as well. There's diesel and cyberpunk, and they have kind of a similar vibe. There's an aspect of fashion and an aspect of technology that are used. I'm not too familiar with those two aspects, but the steampunk I've been kind of delving into a lot more over the years. And people ask, well, can you give an example? It's like
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes, or Wild Wild West, with that big tarantula thing.
Oh yeah.
Or some even, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, if you remember the movie from, what was it, like the late 50s, early 60s. And for me, more recently, it was a book by Kevin J. Anderson called Clockwork Angels. And it's a steampunk-esque universe that was actually based on a rock record. So I get into a lot of these things because it's nice to get immersed into a different world, kind of get away from the doldrums and the stresses of whatever it is you do.
It's like a mini performance.
Exactly.
You're wearing your costume, you're in character. It's a mini performance.
And I always have some kind of a persona when I'm doing a particular costume. So like, with the one at the Earth Day celebration, it was, like a steampunk engineer. So instead of having a pistol in my holster, it was a pipe wrench.
Oh, there we go.
And or I will do, the Dapper Dan, so a little more dressed up, or even go so far as putting a respirator and a long wig on and saying I'm a bounty hunter. And it's all following. It's just variations on the same kind of theme, and so I always like getting into those. So it was a lot of fun doing it at this event too. So it was very cool.
So where do you get your outfits?
Some of the gear that I've used, I'd actually accumulated over the years from like my old reenactment days. Of course, the clothing itself doesn't fit. I've gained a few ounces.
But you can find them if you know the style you're looking for. Like one of my entries was actually steampunk, and that dress was made of drapes, tablecloths, and a little jacket, and I tea-dyed everything. So it had that vintage look to it. And I got a little hat and I covered it in like a burgundy cloth and put a doily on top, so to have that lacy kind of doily. But you wouldn't even know to look at it that it was an actual doily.
Wow.
And then like the back of the dress was a full train, and that was actually a full tablecloth, and I had sewed drapes to it. And then it came up on a belt, and it was slightly bustled, kind of poofed up in the back, but I left the train long.
So I think that could be a career path for you, doing something with fashion.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be wonderful. Wow.
Yeah, I've always liked doing costuming.
So with your tea dyeing, how do you go about doing that?
With tea dyeing, it works good with cottons, not so much polyesters, but it will work. I did Earl Grey and mango tea. So it was black, but the mango tea gave it kind of an orange-ish sheen to it.
So do you put that in the bathtub? Or?
Well, no, actually, I used my grandma's tamale pot, which I have to get back. And I put a lot of water in it, and I boiled like maybe 12 tea bags. And then every material, including the gloves, there was like it was like a little short lace white jacket. I don't know. I used it for something, and then I tea dyed that. Before the drapes and the tablecloth was sewn on to other materials, all that had to be dyed, and everything that I thought I was going to use all had to be dyed, and so it was just progress. It took maybe about 3 days to dye everything.
About that, yeah.
Because the polyesters had to sit in there for a much longer time than the cottons. The cottons was like almost within 5 minutes dyed.
Yeah, so actually Frank was trying to dye my shirt. I think it was cotton, but like a deep pink, like a fuchsia, but it just came out pink. So I don't know how we can get a nice dye job on that.
Probably dye darker. I'll think about that, but it probably just a brighter dye, a brighter pink, and let it set for a while.
Okay.
Most times they'll take like just 10 minutes, but the longer you set, the darker it's gonna get.
Yeah, there's a real art to all of that.
Yeah, the dyeing the textiles, and then painting on textiles. That was always a big thing in the costume shop at Delta. Right. It was like everything had to be pulled from storage, and then you made your costumes. So it was like a lot of dresses, and then you embellished the heck out of them. For the different characters. I remember Cabaret had a lot of intricate outfits, and then even a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Everything. I remember, since I had done plays for a while, and I was like, wait a minute, that came from chess. That came from another play. That one came from children's theater, but they pull from stock, and then they build from there.
Yeah, we even borrowed some costumes from Delta at one point for some of our reenactments because they were the 19th century stuff. And so,
impossible, like you said, before Amazon,
Yeah, the days before Amazon, where you had to go in and you had to find the pattern.
Yeah.
Find someone who
Butter
knew
it.
how to sew.
Oh, well.
And that's another way that as far as like the steampunk stuff in particular, you can find those patterns if you can get them made. You can go online to find these things. You can go to places like Evangeline's for the basics.
There's such an interest in it. I've seen books that are just specifically just on patterns for it. Mm-hmm. And then that historical era.
Yeah.
So it's like Victorian and Edwardian. It goes both.
Yeah. And then you just add your little embellishments here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk about your, you mentioned about the Katrina and like sugar skulls and all your work, with the Mexican Heritage Center. And are you going to do more workshops, sugar skulls?
I would like to. Saul Cerna is the director of the Dia de los Muertos, and I've touched base with him. And then there should be some meetings starting up soon. For me, I'm going to be thinking more little scale. Besides my skull and skeletons that need to get touched up, I need to talk to him to see if you do want any more creations, large scale. Mm-hmm. But definitely doing my sugar skulls. I definitely want to get into like some clay jewelry, kind of like the cameos. I want to do some like paper mache animals. Like little dogs, little cats, little donkeys. Wow. I don't know. I drew them out and they look cute. So I figure if I paper mache them, they'll be even cuter.
Yeah, that'd be neat. Yeah, they're making all kind of I think it's really going to be elaborate. Last year they closed off the street. Mm-hmm. So actually,
so glad they did.
It went like 2 ways. So, there were 2 streets closed off, and all kind of vendors and a car show and things for the kids.
Yeah, that's what it should be. Something big. Mm-hmm. So I'm really glad they went that route.
Yeah, I liked the Katrina festival you had.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you might do that again? Or?
I would like to do the arts program version of it where I would go be teaching about the arts. Like I would go into the schools and teach the history of Sugar Skulls. Talk about Dia de los Muertos, the history of it, why it's so prevalent, and how could that correlate to you? Because you don't have to be Mexican, you don't have to be Catholic to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, because it is honoring. And a lot of kids actually they were like Buddhist, and other friends of mine, there's other cultures that do that as well. Sure. And so when I did the Carnaval de Catrina at the port, I incorporated that. So I actually had African drummers there. The state of, I believe it's Guinea, they have in their homes, they have shelves where they honor their ancestors every day. So every day is Dia de los Muertos. So they came and played songs that were related to that. And then I didn't get I wanted taiko drummers, but I couldn't get them that year. But I also had like break dancers out there. I had modern dance out there. We closed with a band, and then we had Don Aguilar and his large puppetry, and a lot of fun little interactive things going on. But I learned a lot from that festival, and like if I would to be another one, I would know how to make it bigger.
Do you think you would have it in the same location? Or?
Well, with as big as the Mexican Heritage Center one is getting, I would like to work with them. Okay. And then, like I said, also I do want to go into the schools again. I do want to be able to teach again. I don't know. We shall see. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Without that grant, there's no way I would have been able to do it. I mean, the cost of putting on things in public or in the parks, this is a problem Delta Fusion has. The cost of the insurance and everything that goes into it, even if you're a nonprofit or, for education or for culture, it still runs in the thousands. So it's really hard to put things on.
So you got a grant from the Arts Commission?
Yeah, for 2 years.
Okay. So actually, I got a grant from the Arts Commission, and I still ended up putting some of my own money into it.
I had to do a lot of fundraising, and I think at the end of the day, I wound up putting like $300 in of my own money. Yeah, because it's never enough.
Yeah, because what was insane, I thought I wanted to do something there by the waterfront. Use the Joan Darrah Promenade. So that's right on the south side of the waterfront, and then use another. It's an amphitheater up by across the street from the city hall, and I thought that the fee would only be like $50. They ended up charging me like $500 just to use those spaces.
Oh yeah.
And then they wanted someone security.
Yep.
And
you had to have security. You have to have insurance. You have to have your porta potty. I mean,
so I didn't expect all that.
Yeah, it's like what It's like, wait a minute, do we really? But it's mandatory. Yeah. Because on city property, it's mandatory, which is kind of sad because it's so hard to come up with that amount of. It was like easy, almost $3,000 just for that little festival that I had that one year, and I still, like I said, I still want to put money into it, and I was fundraising a lot. I was fundraising as much as I could, and then we were selling things too, but. Yeah.
So I think the city needs to help with that, reduce the permits. Like,
it would be if, or at least they had like an assistance program for the arts, for like Delta Fusion, cultural groups, cultural festivals. I'm growing up in Stockton. I remember there being a lot of festivals. I remember watching the breakdance festivals in the park. I remember watching the Tahitian dancers, the Hawaiian dancers. There was a lot of festivals going on, and it's just with the cost of permits and everything, I mean, because if it's an educational, cultural program, why wouldn't there be, some assistance in that? Right.
I mean, because I think the arts really does. The arts do so much for the community.
Exactly. It brings the community together, you know, and when you're teaching about the arts, because, you know, we know in the public schools now they're not really doing a whole lot anymore. You know, it's kind of slightly brushed on, but and that's it. So to have them, you know, immersed in an interactive and, you know, seeing things, you know, so it's like an audio visual experience, experiencing culture, you know, then it's going to promote more understanding. It's going to promote more creativity. And it's just all positive, you know. So,
have you heard of the Peace and Light Festival?
I've heard of it. I haven't had to attend, though.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful thing. It's reminds me of Day of the Dead, but in Cambodia, they make these floating lanterns. And in memory of their loved ones.
Yeah.
And they had them like floating down the waterway in downtown Stockton. Mm-hmm. So they've done that for 3 years.
Oh, I got to go this year. But yeah, like I was saying about, you know, there's so many other cultures that do Dia de los Muertos in their own in their own way, you know. So, you know, being able to find a way to I would like to find a way to incorporate all that together into one festival.
So actually, I was thinking that's what I wanted to do. We should get together on that.
Absolutely.
So last year I called it the Multicultural Peace and Light Festival, but I'm going to change that name. It would be the Multicultural Healing Festival. So it's just a way that, you know, different cultures come together and heal each other. Yeah. So I know that. You know, learning about Dia de los Muertos and making the altars really helped me in my own life.
Absolutely, you know.
Being able to remember my aunts and friends, my father, you know.
Like they say, Dia de los Muertos, you don't, you know, death is just the other part of life. It's very, it's just the other half. Yeah. You don't never truly die until you're forgotten.
Yeah, one of my aunts, my favorite aunt, she said it's all part of the journey.
Yes, that's a very good way to say it.
Yeah.
And I forgot that you did an altar at the Hagen Museum.
Yeah, I did that. I did the altar at the Hagen in, was it 2013?
We need to get that back. Susan Ober, please. They've changed the museum a little bit. So,
I heard.
I think they could find, you know, some nook or cranny to have that. That really meant a lot.
Yeah, they told me that was the biggest one they had. I can make it bigger.
What was yours? Who was it?
Mine was friends and family. Oh. You know, because you can't. I mean, my friends are such a big part of my life. You know, they're my other family. Mm-hmm. You know, I have adopted fathers, I have adopted sisters and brothers, you know, so I couldn't just have family, but I had my family. And then I had the correlations of family, because like my father's side is Caucasian, my mother's side is Mexican. But one of the correlations I had was actually on the side of the altar, and they both my great-grandmothers advocated for Cesar Chavez. My great-grandmother Agnes Herman, she actually marched. She was working at St. Mary's at the time. She marched from Stockton to Sacramento. Wow. And then my other great-grandmother, Francesca Limon, she talked about, she advocated for him, and she talked about him in such a way I thought he was a saint, you know. So, you know, both my great-grandmothers had that in common. So I had that on the side. And then I had, you know, for each person, distinctive things about them, and including my grandmother's baby sister had passed away as a baby, so we had a little baby section too.
And another thing, actually, the Hagen could work on. Maybe you could help them with that. Is the Flori Canto. And,
Rios used to do that.
Yeah, Richard had been doing that, and he passed it over to another artist. But you know, maybe we could just get going on that too. I'd like to see that continue. Just
yeah, you know, these cultural exhibitions. You know, it's important.
Right.
You know, if you don't do it, you know, it'll be forgotten. and the more people you touch with it, it really brings about, like I said, a lot more understanding and peace and, creativity.
So we're almost to that time, but one final thought. I'm wearing this shirt here. It says peace on it. Have you been over to the University Park World Peace Rose Garden?
No, I don't know. I moved back in 2017.
Okay.
So now it's just working, and so now I have a little free time. So I'm looking for more work, but
so actually today they celebrated their third anniversary.
Oh, nice.
And it's right there in the entrance to University Park. I think it's Grant and Magnolia Streets. It's right there on the corner when you come through the entrance, that first intersection. But it's just a lovely rose garden they've put, and it's all about peace. It's one of the many World Peace Rose Gardens around the world. So they had their ceremony today, and we're talking about peace. 4 of the different schools in the area, they do a contest and have all the kids write a poem, write a message of peace, and then they put all the messages in the garden.
Oh, wow.
So
that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it does.
So that's another thing maybe you could get involved, with schools.
Yeah.
Working on that kind of thing. I know that I had been involved with Draw It Out, and we had for 3 years we did Art Against Violence. We had a art exhibit, and so we need to just keep those kind of things going. I just wanted to mention, and now I forgot the exact website, but it's the World Peace Rose Garden. I think it's worldpeacerosegarden.org. And in Stockton, they're trying to send the winner to Atlanta. So if you could donate, anything you would like to donate, mark your donation Atlanta. And it is nonprofit, so it's tax deductible. So if you'd like to do a donation and send the winning message, he's a student at the Health Careers Academy, and he would be going with his parent over to Atlanta. So he needs a little bit of traveling money. So if you'd like to look that up, and let's spread peace in the world. And I'm very happy to talk to you today,
Thank you for
Angelique.
inviting
Thank
me.
you. Appreciate
And
it.
Jason.
Thank you for having us.
So that's show 51 in the books, on the way to 100. Catch you next time on Behind the Art Scene.
Bye.